Hello, I'm your host, David Newson, and welcome to Coded in Gold. This podcast explores the fractured yet beautiful pieces of our modern lives. I dive into compelling stories and speak with high-performing, multi-dimensional individuals to uncover moments of insight and learning. So, let's get started. Today, I am so excited to bring you the first interview on Coded in Gold. When I first envisioned this podcast, I knew I wanted to tell my own stories. But even more than that, I wanted to use this opportunity to connect with some of the incredible people that have influenced me and inspired me along the way. It's fitting that this first interview springs off of our very first episode. Go back and listen to that if you haven't already. That's right, we're going back to our family values. Today's interview is with Alex Kirby, CEO and founder of Total Family. Alex's service offers coaching for families to get them together and define their values. This is the same exercise that my family went through and ultimately inspired me to think differently and more intentionally about values. I sat down with Alex to learn more about his company, why family values are so important to him, and learn more about the values that influenced him early on. I had a great time speaking with Alex, and I'm so excited for you all to hear our deep and wide-ranging conversation. So without further ado, let's jump in. Alex Kirby, welcome to Coded in Gold. Before we get started, I would love to have you introduce yourself to our community. So I'll kind of let you take it from here.
Very nice to be here. I'm Alex Kirby, the founder and CEO of Total Family. We are a family dynamics and governance company, primarily in the wealth and family office space. And I think we're known for helping families uncover their vision, which is their values, their purpose, and their roles, as you know.
As I know, that's right. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate you and your time. My family would not have a documented version of our vision and values without you and your firm and your colleagues. So thank you.
Of course.
And to get us started, I want to really dig into, and for those of you just catching up with this episode, in episode 1 of Coded in Gold, we talked about family values. We talked about how my husband and I developed our own family values. I talked about my legacy family values that I grew up with in a Mormon household. And at this stage of life, it feels pretty amazing to actually have a documented version. And so I thought it would be fun to actually go and talk to the man who has actually started Total Family, who helped operationalize my family's values and vision, which we're really grateful for. So I would love to know and understand, Alex, how Total Family came into being.
Yeah, I wish I had like an amazing sort of like entrepreneurial apple from the tree moment. I actually really struggle with the story of it, but I think like the big question for me was, am I doing my best work at home or at the office? And I've always been like a bit of a workaholic. I was working with a technology executive in San Francisco. And as we were trying to like work through all of this stuff for his business unit, he and I knew him pretty well. He told me that he was going through a divorce. And
What year is this? Let's
this is,
contextualize time too.
yeah, this is 2019. So this is pre-pandemic.
Okay.
I'm traveling like all the time. And he's like, I'm going through a divorce and I'm looking at this board and I'm looking at all of our documentation and all the stuff that we're doing.
Mm.
And I'm like, I have no plan for my actual life. I'm now getting a divorce and I'm a child of divorce. So that like hit home for me at the time. I was already married. And I
Mm.
think like getting divorced was always like a huge fear of mine. I just never
Sure.
really wanted it to happen.
How old were you when that happened, by the way?
When my parents got divorced,
Yeah,
I was 7.
you were 7. I was 9.
Really?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have like crazy vivid memories from that time, as I'm sure you do too.
I
which is
do.
super weird. And it's also, as a parent, terrifying,
Absolutely
right?
terrifying. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I like remember I told my mom I like remember the night my mom like left the house and I told her about it and she was
Wow.
like, no way.
Oh yeah.
Like had the layout, had the, all the stuff, like
Oh
it
yeah.
was, you know, and so 2019, then like 2020 hits,
Okay.
everyone's sort of reevaluating everything. My wife and I find out that we're gonna have our first child.
Wow.
And then it's like, the whole midlife crisis thing of like, am I doing something I believe in? Am I doing something that,
Alex, whoa, 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 whoa. Time out. Time out. Midlife. What are you talking about, man? I feel
well,
like I'm starting to get to midlife. There's a
I'm a
big difference
fast
between
learner.
these two tiles, man.
I'm a fast learner. And I think that,
Okay. Okay.
so like, and I think ultimately it's probably not the last midlife crisis I'll have,
For sure.
right?
For sure.
But I think that's the question. It's like, are we doing our best work at home? Are we doing our best work at the office? And
Mm.
not to say that work isn't really important. It is. It's important to both you and I.
Yeah.
But maybe just shifting some of the ideas and resources and time spent being thoughtful on the work side to the home side is really the big idea for Total Family.
Oh, that's great. And also, I just have to say, like, one of the episodes that's coming up is like I think the next one that's dropping is an entire episode on work, and it's really workaholism
Yeah,
because that's the one thing that I struggle with. Like, it is in my DNA to work.
me too.
It is actually where I find flow. Like, I
Yeah,
am actually, and this is not like a comment on my family, this is a comment about historically speaking about where I have found the most, and it pains me to even put it this way, but the most ROI, right? It's
yeah,
like I put energy into work and I've gotten a lot of like good stuff out of it, right? Like whether it be promotions or a successful business or whatever it is, I've found it's been a very rewarding loop for me.
mm,
Now, the challenge with that when a family comes into the picture is now you have to split. You have to split. If you want a successful family, and it's funny, I listened to a quote from Indra, the former chairman of PepsiCo. And I've even seen some like internet memes, whether it's Instagram or wherever, where she's, being interviewed and she's like, there's no such thing as work-life balance.
yeah.
No such thing. There is no, you can't balance them. It is a prioritization exercise.
Yeah.
And then
I
she
literally
makes
have
this,
that written down, like, because I know we were talking about it a little bit, and she's an amazing thinker on this. I totally agree with that.
and what's fascinating is she actually says, like, and my husband has used this line on me before, right? Where she's like, we have to leave our crowns in the garage on our way into our homes, right? Like, whatever role we were, and this even comes into like the process that we went through with Total Family,
Yeah.
right? The roles that we play when we step through that door, like, or me, when I leave this office, right? I close this door, I'm closing the door on my work life, and I'm entering really a sacred space with my family, and my
Yeah.
role shifts like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Indra is saying like, hey, so my husband would say like, hey, you could leave your crown in your office. Or when I was on the road traveling a lot, he was like, when you pull the car into the garage, you can leave your crown in the garage, just like Indra said, and then come in and be like a husband, a dad,
Yeah.
like these other things. Because there's times it's just hard to shift. It's hard to move from one role to the next. At least it is for me.
Yeah. I think that's a cool thing about family or kids in general too. Like the family dynamic space has largely been reserved for the ultra high net worth billionaire population.
Totally.
We're trying to change that. But I think when you watch like any of these like documentaries about famous people or celebrities or whatever,
Mm,
like the reason that, if you're Taylor Swift, like her mom is still her mom,
that's right.
you know? And I
Yep.
think that there's something like that's very sacred about the relationships that we have with our families that maybe outside looking in, like if you don't have $1 billion, you would think like it's going to change everything in your life. And it will certainly change like a lot of things.
Mm.
Like you don't have to probably vacuum if you have $1 billion, but you
That's one of
still
the things.
like, I was thinking like, you know, Jeff Bezos is probably like, my kids don't listen to me. Can you talk to them? Just like every single one of us feels that same way. Or if you're a billionaire and your mom is still like kind of treating you like you're a not a grown adult or something like
Sure.
that. You're
Yeah.
like, so I think that there's something that's very human about family and the roles that you're talking about. And your family's like don't care if you have $1 billion, if you have a crown, if
That's right.
like what you did in the meeting today.
Okay, so 2019, you have this conversation. You decide you're going to start Total Family. We kind of start entering the pandemic. We all reevaluated our lives, absolutely, for sure. We stopped going
For
into
sure.
offices. Like, life really kind of changed overnight. And what's also interesting is like there's this whole like push to go back into office like across the board, which is an interesting exercise. I don't know how that's going to pan out for folks.
Probably not super
Um,
well.
yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Um,
Well, I should just say taking people's autonomy away from them is doesn't usually end well,
it doesn't
right?
usually end well. That's a great point. That's
Right?
it. You're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things, well, we
It's
can dig
like
into
you're an
this a little bit.
adult, you're an adult, I'm going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but I need you here on Wednesdays.
Ooh,
With
yeah,
not a great with like no reason behind it other
sure.
than we signed a 15-year office lease or something.
Sure. I mean, it's also interesting too. Like one of the things, and my husband and I were just talking about this the other night. Sometimes corporate environments love to use, and I recently read a book called Cultish, right, on cult language, right. And I'm not calling corporate environments cults. I'm not saying that. But what's also interesting is like there's this, you're in a certain type of a work environment when you're in a high powered, high octane firm and they start talking about like we're all a family, right? But what happens is like if you leave a firm for whatever reason, or certainly if you're laid off, let's just take that. Like
Yeah.
folks that get laid off for whatever reason, and then it's like they just vanished. Like people don't talk to them. It's
Oh
almost
my
like they've been
gosh.
just extricated from like the family.
Yeah.
And we all know that that doesn't really happen. Like
Right.
so then why do they use those terms? And well, it's obvious to me why they use those terms. It's like, what families can get away with a lot more than,
Right.
like just a working relationship. And so while the sentiment, like I understand like the good-natured sentiment of,
Sure.
okay, we're all a family, it feels good, we're bonding, we're spending perhaps an inordinate amount of time with each other as
Yeah.
well. But then there's perhaps the less positive side of it, which comes along with like, well, when I say I need you to do something, I expect you to be there the way family is, which means any time of day, intruding in on, your family time with your family, or, like, oh, you should be at the school play. And like, I've asked you to do this thing. And now because we're family, I feel torn, like I should be doing this thing at work,
Yeah.
which should not be the case. I want to be clear about that. Like, and I've worked really hard on boundaries between work and life.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I, work less than 40 hours a week. Like, that's just not true. It's probably twice that.
Yep.
Um, but there are inviolable spaces on the calendar where it's like, oh no,
Totally.
I need to be at that school thing, or, I need to be at my son's swim practice, or, whatever the thing may be.
Yeah. Something that I'll just share with you, you might find it interesting just for like this specific topic
Yeah.
is now we're in like year three of our cycle and like of being a company. So for all of our people, like we all have our own families and we can't be hypocrites and be
No.
like, prioritizing our clients' families over our own families. So we're always very careful about that. But one of the things we implemented this year, and we're doing it again, is we basically just shut down Our coaches don't do sessions from December 15th. So like depending
Okay.
on when this goes up, December
Yeah.
15th to January 15th, and then the
Oh,
whole
wow.
month of July. The whole month of July. So it's
That is
basically like,
amazing, Alex.
and we looked at like all of our data, and we found like a handful of things. Like one, in July, like a lot of people are gone, checked out. Families are
True.
actually together
Yeah.
many times on vacation or doing
Yeah.
whatever. So we like we're having low session rates during that time. And then the holiday season paired with the start of the new year was like our highest reschedule rate because people would be like, "Oh yeah, of course we could do a workshop on December 27th or January 3rd." And then, they get to the date and they're like, I want to move this out a few weeks or whatever. And what that has allowed like our team to do, I think, is be generally like off kind of at the same time.
Yeah.
If our clients want to meet during that time and it's an emergency, we'll figure it out. If we
For
have
sure.
things to do as a company, like we'll figure it out. But if someone is like, hey, can you, just a random non-time sensitive meeting, like, hey, can you meet July 25th? We're like, can you do August 3rd? And they're like,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And
Of
then
course.
we communicate all this to our clients in advance so everyone knows. And I think like more seasonality, I could see companies starting to think about seasonality more because every business has like their really busy time and their less busy time. And right now, the answer from most companies are like, we need you at your best every single day, 24/7, 365. And if you think about sports or something like that, they have a playoff season, they have an off season, they have all these different things. And so we're trying to embrace like seasonality a little bit so we all get time with our own families.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that because um, I'm in the first year of my own company after kind of, being a career corporate citizen, shall we say, or in some ways a corporate citizen. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, but I guess my last few have been good corporate citizens in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm in year one, and this year, now I didn't do December 15th through January 15th, but I did say, like, hey, December 15th to the end of the year, we're out.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it feels good. And I also took time, like, for Thanksgiving this year, I took 2 solid weeks. We did some international travel because right, so this comes back to what we developed and explored with Joy at Total Family. Like, our vision
Joy
statement.
is our VP of coaching. She's
Oh yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, Joy and fantastic. Our experience was amazing, and we came up. Our vision statement is to explore, experience, and impact. And so, one example of us actually living that, like recently, is like my husband is from China originally. That's where he was born. Um, it's very important for me to have my son see very large amounts of people who look like him.
Okay.
Right? And so we were in Asia for 2 weeks recently, and that's part of that explore experience. Maybe
Yep.
not so much impact, but like definitely the first two were checking those boxes. Not that they're
Yep.
boxes to check, but like it felt really good that we did this exercise this year and that we are then in taking intentional time to go do these things as a family.
Yeah.
It brings a level of depth to it that it's one thing to do an exercise, right? But if you just
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
exercise and you leave it on a sheet of paper, or in the case of Total Family, you just leave it in your portal,
Yep.
which I'm looking at right now. But you look at your portal and it's like you have your vision statement, you have your values, you have all of your sessions, you've got these beautiful quotes also that Joy pulls out, which is a wonderful keepsake for us as we're going in. And I'm looking at like, oh gosh, my husband said that in that session,
I'm
and it's
so
this
excited for you to see like what we have coming on the technology front too, because like so
cool.
many of our clients have expressed interest of writing letters to their kids
Mm,
and having a place to keep them. So we already have some clients who do it on their anniversary every year. They write a letter to their kids. on
Oh,
their
that's a great
anniversary
idea.
as like a cool ritual. But
Great
then the
idea.
question becomes like, do I just store it in Gmail and then like I get targeted ads about my private letter to my child? So they wanted to play, so we're going to give people that call it's like a little legacy letter thing. But I want to point to your purpose statement, the explore, experience, and impact, because I think it's a great purpose statement. Purpose statements are intentionally broad. They are supposed to be inspirational.
Mm.
And a really good purpose statement is something that you will never achieve. You just always aspire to. So you're never going to be like, well, we've explored, experienced, and impacted enough. Like
Right.
right?
Yeah,
It's
no.
something that you and your partner can look at as a North Star always to make sure that you're going in the direction that you want to be going and that you're aligned with your purpose. So I think it's a really, really beautiful purpose statement.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Not
Yeah, I
surprising
mean,
coming from a marketer.
my husband is not a marketer though, and
Okay.
we did it together. I think yeah, I think it came for us it came out really well, I think.
Yeah.
It's an accurate reflection of like who we are and who we aspire like to be, certainly in, these various roles. Do you use these tools in your life?
Yes. Well, my wife is very patient, and you can imagine in the early days of this, testing all of these ideas out.
Hmm.
We've iterated through thousands of conversations at this point.
Wow.
So when you talk about vision, it's like we're trying to really hone in on something that works for people. And where the, version one of this was 3 years ago is not where it is today. And we expect it'll continue to evolve as we learn from our clients in like our broad range of experiences with families around the country. Like we're learning things from families constantly. But one of our company values is authenticity. And so everyone in our company has gone through vision with their own partner or spouse, to the extent that like, they were comfortable doing it.
Sure, sure.
And for a while, like we had a couple of people who their spouse didn't want to do it. And so then they couldn't do it. And we were like unsure what to do. And then finally we just said, you know what, go through without your spouse. Because at the end of the
Yes,
day, like they shouldn't have to get to decide if you get a vision or
totally.
not. And then
Totally.
like 9 out of 10 times when you tell you're like, I'm going on without you. The spouse is like, wait, no,
Yeah.
I'll come. Right.
My husband
Um,
initially didn't want to do it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was like, what, vision what? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like had a real hard time like wrapping his head around, you know, it's at the end of the day, like his view was, don't you just live these things? Isn't your life just an example and an outward expression of these things anyway? What is the point in like actually going through an exercise?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, like I wanted him to participate, right? And so I said, like, okay, let's just get through a session. Like, let's
Sure.
start with let's commit to 90 minutes, right? So like the
Sure.
first session is 90 minutes, and it's like, okay, let's just start with the first one. And I also have to say, like, it was really hard to carve the time out. Like it would be on the
Yeah. Yeah.
calendar, and I moved it a couple of times, and it was just like, oh man, like it was just really challenging to go from like I'm going a million miles a minute at work, and then it's
Yeah.
like, ooh, time out, 90 minutes, and it's like I have to step through the threshold from like I have to take my crown off and like but put it down in my office where it's like I'm not used to that. It's like, oh, I need to be a dad right now in my office, and it's like,
Sure.
ooh, okay, that was a really tough transition.
One of the things that I feel like is true is families very often get our like leftover energy, right?
This is
Where,
true. This
where
is
we're
true.
like, we're
Yeah.
grinding, we're going, and
Yep.
you got nothing left at the end of the day. And then that's what your partner or your kid or whoever gets.
Yeah.
And that isn't always the case, but I do think there's power in like a 10 a.m. Wednesday meeting to the extent it can work for for a couple, and we try to like it's very easy to schedule with us. It's all virtual. Like we have a lot of clients who are people are traveling and doing different things. It's an hour to 90 minutes, like, you know, but you do it at 10 a.m.
Oh
and it's
yeah.
like a different level of energy than when you come home, you get the kids down, you do all this stuff. It's 10 p.m. and then you go to have this really important conversation with your spouse or partner, and you're like, I can't do this right now.
Well, yeah, that wouldn't work out well for us.
So I think there's a bit of like shifting energy to like this type of work, which it's really important work, right? It's probably
It
more
is.
important than whatever conference call you moved,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah.
I think the second piece of it is like doing it in bite-sized pieces for people. You know, after you go through vision for you and your partner, it's like maybe you want to see your coach again next year. Maybe you want to see your coach again in 6 months. Maybe you want to see your coach again in 3 years. It doesn't matter. You did great work. You kind of are already in the 99th percentile of people who have done family dynamics work.
Yep.
And I think this work before Total Family was largely like 2 day in-person offsites, you know, exhausting, you know, 10 hours at a time of blah, blah, blah. It's like no wonder people didn't enjoy it that much,
Well, you think
right?
about it. You think about it. If you were doing an offsite with your family, it's like like for that amount of time, like it's like Thanksgiving times, like it's a
Totally.
multiple of every Thanksgiving, and we all know, right, like what Thanksgiving can be like. Not because we don't like our families, but it's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, hey, I think there was even a quote. Maybe I think maybe the Dalai Lama said it or something, and he was like, if you think that you've achieved enlightenment, go spend a day with your family,
Sure.
right? It's like that, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, it's just like these people that know us so well, we know them so well, and yeah, it would that would be exhausting.
I
I can't
I feel
imagine
like
it.
it's a workout, like it's like a workout kind of where you think about you're like I got to work out today, and then you're like I don't really want to,
Right?
you know. But then after you do it, you're like you feel
Oh, I
great.
feel great. Yeah, yeah,
So it's definitely that for people where they're like I have this conversation. I don't know. I got a lot I could
yeah.
do, and then they do it, and they're like that was really like that was the best conversation we've had in like 3 years.
Sure.
You know, and
Yeah.
and our coaches just have this like amazing ability to just listen. Joy and I were talking about this yesterday. It's like the sense of feeling listened to is
Oh,
getting rarer and rarer
it
for
is.
people. And so like when you say something or like when you say to your partner or one of your friends, you're like, "Yeah, I had a really rough day," and they're like, what was hard about it?" You're like,
Hmm. Whoa.
"What?"
Yeah, yeah.
Like usually the response is, yeah, me too. Like join the
Right.
club
Right.
or
Right.
whatever, you know? And so I think our coaches do like a really good job of making people feel listened to. And it's just like that is just a cool feeling to give people.
It is. And to your point, my husband and I hadn't had conversations like that, you know, one on one, expressing like things from our own childhood and development and how it informs like our view of the world today. Like there was just a lot
Yeah.
that got unpacked very quickly over the course of like an hour, 90 minutes. But that got put to use like right away.
Sure.
And you could feel this sense of like, oh, we're moving somewhere, we're getting
Sure.
somewhere, right?
Yeah. I
And that
think
was
that's the
that's the
power in
beauty of
like
that and power of like that structure.
you're like looking for like you're grabbing the stuff, but you're looking forward the whole time. You
Totally.
know, you're like, I'm not trying to solve all the stuff back here, but it is a part of me
Mm.
in one way or another. And we're always trying to look forward for these conversations. And then through the lens of like, you know, whether it be kids or a new marriage or, you know, legacy or whatever. But yeah, I love, I remind me of your values. What were presence?
Yeah, they're right here.
I know you're going to look at your quote
Love,
on totalfamily.io.
love, kindness, joy, responsibility, and purpose.
Can I make a comment about the family values episode that you did, your first episode of Coded in Gold?
Sure. Oh yeah, please.
Because you talked about the evolution of your mom and your sister. who had been like anti-gay marriage. You weren't sure if your mom was even going to come to your wedding,
Sure.
all that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
And so the question is, there's like two options. It's either their values changed, which is possible, but I don't think that's what happened.
That's correct.
Because you have love as one of your values, and you said this unconditional love thing was something that was like intrinsically in your upbringing, unconditional love. So I
Yes.
think what happened was your mom and your sister, when they looked at their own values, they picked love for you, for their son and their brother over all the other stuff. And I think in values, like we start with 72 words, as you know, they're all good words. Integrity and loyalty and adventure and presence. And like no one would be offended if you called them any of those words. But when push comes to shove, you have to pick the ones that are most important to you that you're going to live by no matter what, in tough times, hard times, easy times. And that decision was probably hard for your sister and your mom, but they picked love as their value, and that one superseded all of them. And so I thought it was a really cool story.
Thank you. Wow, dude. Jeez.
I know. I told you when I thought about it, I like got choked up because I just thought it was really nice.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's those moments in life. It challenged a belief that I had held
Yeah.
that I think humans sometimes slip into, where it's like, oh yeah, you hit 40 years old and you're locked. Like you're not
Right.
changing, you're not like, and it's interesting too, like I don't think that a mindset shift might have happened, but their values absolutely didn't change, right? Like they didn't have to change their values to show up in this way
Right.
for me and my
Right.
husband and our
They
family,
didn't.
right? They didn't.
Yeah.
It was perfectly aligned with their values, in fact.
It was.
And but it was also a huge, it was like a lightning bolt for me that like, don't ever count people out. Like don't bet on people not changing. Like it's easy to
Yeah.
make those assumptions in everyday life. Like, oh yeah, people don't change. And you kind of say it like in passing and it's like no big deal. But then there's some of these like really big moments in your life where it's celebratory for you and you don't really know how all of the chips are going to fall. And then they fall and they completely like surprise you in these
Yeah.
beautiful, unexpected.
I feel like in there is just like forgiveness and giving people a little bit of slack and we tend to like very much see our own change. Like I'm not the same person I was last year, 10 years ago or
Totally.
whatever. But then
Yeah.
when you look at someone else, it's like same old David, right?
Totally, totally, totally. Oh,
But
that's
like
so true.
we're constantly like applauding our own change and growth
Mm,
and but then when we look at the other side, it's like, oh, it's just Uncle Tom or whatever, blah blah blah. But like, and of course, some people don't change. That's true too. But I think like being open to it,
sure.
where you can vote against gay marriage and then come back and say, you know, if I could do that over, I would.
Yeah.
And then to have that person say, like, it's okay,
Yeah.
instead of, nope, you voted,
But yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Sorry.
Like I think like all of us just like giving each other, um, like if we're not going to forgive our family members, who are we going to forgive, kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
And just like be just giving each other a little bit more slack. I think it and allowing for that growth in people is really, really helpful.
For sure. Let's go back to, we've been talking a lot about like how this works.
Sure.
So maybe you just kind of give us a breakdown, like, okay, how does it work? Lay out what the process looks like from an operation, just how does it work?
Yeah. Usually, I mean, most of the time we get hired by, well, firms, family offices, sometimes employers.
Okay.
And then we have two offerings. We have the coach-led kind of VIP offering that you went through, where you jump on a video call with a human-led coach, and they go through our vision process. The vision process that you went through is 6 sessions over, 4 to 6 months, an hour to 90 minutes apiece. We try to tell people like, do it when you have energy. Don't do it when you're stressed, when you're in line for the airport. Like
Yeah,
there is
definitely
really
don't do that.
no deadline, right?
Right.
Like you could do it in 2 weeks, do it in 2 months, whatever. And at the end of those sessions, you're going to have a defined vision for both individuals and for your family. And then we also have a software only offering that is kind of geared towards people who are looking to make a lower level of investment but want to dip their toe into doing some of this, and everyone has access to our coaches after the fact.
Why the wealth management space first? And to be clear, I think what you just said was we have this offering, we rolled it out for wealth management firms initially.
Yeah,
You now have a digital version that's really open to anyone who wants to participate in
yeah,
this way, which I think is awesome. I don't think that's how you started, but like,
yeah.
talk to me a little bit about like how you started, why wealth management, and then its evolution. I mean, personally, I think it's awesome that it's open for everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
The wealth managers and the family offices, like when we originally started talking about vision and values and all this kind of stuff, um, someone told me, they're like, "Oh, you're doing it's family dynamics." And I'm like, "What? What is that? What's family
huh?
dynamics?"
Sure.
And so, this family dynamics and governance space that is largely in wealth management and family offices is established.
Correct.
The kind of like founding father of a lot of this work, I think, is Jay Hughes, who created the 5 forms of family capital
Hmm.
in 1998. And a lot of people have picked up Jay's work, Ultra High Net Worth Institute, Jim Grubman and colleagues who wrote Wealth 3.0, and a
Hmm.
lot of this work has continued on. But I think for us, the problem wasn't we need another model, we need another framework, we need another something. It's
Hmm.
like, how do you actually do it? Because most people listening probably are like, does my firm offer family dynamics? Like,
Sure.
does my firm offer values? And
Yeah.
the answer might be they might, to a very small segment of their population,
Right.
or they don't do it at all. And I think for us, what we found in this work is that like the stuff we're talking about, wanting what's best for our kids, wanting good relationships with our family members,
Mhm.
wanting to have some purpose, like that has nothing to do with money
That's right.
whatsoever.
That's right.
So we had an established kind of framework in the wealth space, but we as a company felt like, it lacked scalability, it really lacked technology, and it
Mm.
lacked consistency because if you're relying on the advisors to do this, and you have a firm that has say 100 advisors,
Sure.
working with David, I might get this thoughtful, unbelievable discovery process around values and da da da. But if I go, to a different person who doesn't see the benefit of it, I have a totally different client experience in the wealth
Correct.
space.
Yes.
And then I think ultimately why we found a home there is they have some challenges coming, the wealth managers. And like everyone talks about the great transfer. Cerulli just put out, it's like 164 trillion is the
Sure.
like
Sure. I saw
insane
that too.
number,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But the great transfer is causing problems. It's not the problem in and of itself.
No.
And the problem that it's causing is most of these wealth firms don't know the spouse that doesn't handle the finances,
Correct.
which is why most of them leave after their spouse
Sure.
passes. They're like, this firm doesn't know
Yep.
me.
Hmm.
And they don't know the kids. And for us, these conversations are not only important, but they're a really great way to establish relationships with the rising gen and with the spouse. Because you don't have, if you're someone with $50 million, right, your wealth manager is saying, okay, well, this conversation about inheritance is really hard. So, like, we got to work our way through it. But in actuality, lots of conversations and family stuff are hard.
Hmm.
The $50 million inheritance conversation feels like the hardest.
Sure.
So maybe we don't start there. Maybe we start about talking about our values and establishing some common language and getting the communication going amongst the family with the wealth firm involved there in partnership, because like we want continuity. We want to be good partners for the wealth firms that embrace our ideas. It's not every firm, as you know, that thinks family dynamics is important, but I think the firms that do think it's important have found it to be a competitive advantage, a way to get to know their clients on a much deeper level and use the great transfer as like an opportunity instead of something to be scared of.
I'm going to put my marketing hat on for a moment and my work hat a little bit and kind of just step through. You talked about a bunch of things in the wealth management space, and I want to kind of like just set a foundational kind of context
Okay.
for some of those things. One, I find it funny. Like, yes, there's this great transfer coming, but like 20 years ago, I think Cerulli still had a report then, or like Cerulli's been around for a long time, but they've been talking about the great wealth transfer forever.
Right. Right.
And the
Of
number
course.
seems to grow every time they publish something. So now it's like 160 trillion or whatever it is. Before it was a little less than that, but it's really the same concept that, boomers are, kind of aging out, and like there's going to be this transfer of wealth from that generation to the next one. And it's primarily going to be moving from, call it the, wealth creator to the spouse.
Yep.
And, they think that that is, mostly going to benefit a lot of women. I think that was also in that report.
Yeah.
But when we go back, like to the historical context of wealth management, at least in the independent wealth management space, not necessarily so much talking about wirehouses and broker dealers and like the big banks, but
Yep.
in the independent space, it was okay, we're fiduciaries. And I think it really started coming online probably somewhere in the mid 80s. And it was investment management focused. Like, okay,
Right.
we're fiduciaries, we're putting your interest ahead of our own first. And it was investment management focused. Then let's call it the next iteration of wealth management is, oh, financial planning comes online. And they realize, like, oh gosh, we start doing financial planning. You get a designation, the certified financial planner designation. And there's like an industry starts building around deeper levels of engagement with people, right? And so now we're not just talking about money. Now we're talking about a financial plan, which obviously can be deeply impacted by someone's values.
Sure.
And then like this next iteration that came along is like, oh, holistic wealth management. It's the integration of like, financial planning, investment management, and who you are as a person and a family, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think where it's also headed, I have, the benefit of having conversations with these clients, and something's still missing for them. And I
Yeah.
think that missing piece is around this component of, gosh, I really wish my wealth manager, and there's also a deep level of skepticism too about the industry still.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
they
Sure.
might have a fantastic view, a wonderful view of their advisor, but there's
Yeah.
still this like just beyond that, there's this like level of skepticism with the entire industry. And so my mind starts working on that problem of, well, gosh, that is an opportunity to solve that. And how do you do that? And the way that you do that is by like deeper relationships,
Yeah.
and and maybe tightening up your service model a little bit. And this is like one of the like this is an obvious way to get there with clients.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it too, just like you said, is by bringing in an outside party to do that and partner with a firm, you are going to get that consistency instead of like adding it to another to do for a wealth manager.
Yeah.
And so I think I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, the work with families, I feel so you talked about like the quotes that Joy pulled out, for
Oh
example,
yeah.
right? So like imagine that after you've been working with Total Family for 40 years,
Wow.
you know? Like
Yeah.
imagine the level of understanding that not only you can have about yourselves, but that you can make sure gets reflected in your estate plan and your financial plan, and having it not be like miserable to go through those things,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Where you're actually like instead of it being a one-time miserable event, man, I'm never like got our estate plan done. Don't want to ever think about it again.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it being that, it's like, once a year for an hour, we contemplate our legacy or we talk about where we're trying to go as a family. And
Mm.
if you do that for an hour a year for 30
Yeah.
years, you're
Mm.
going to create something that's meaningful for both you guys to use as a roadmap for yourselves, or if you're not there,
Correct.
And so holistic is like a word, obviously, that everyone like throws out. I don't even totally know what it means, but I ultimately think like the clients are looking for people to understand them on a deeper level and implement that in some way, shape, or form. So like if I looked at, you know, if I think about explore, experience, impact, like wouldn't it be cool if your financial advisor, your financial firm was like, how much are you guys allocating in your budget on a go forward basis for exploring? And
Totally.
you're like, oh, I never thought of that. I guess
Right.
like, X amount a year
That's
kind of
right.
thing. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden you start to get a plan that like feels much more like an extension of you guys than just David and his partner want to retire one day and pay for college, and it's just like a generic thing
Totally.
instead
Totally.
of like, so love, kindness, joy, responsibility, purpose, like how can we find ways to bring that in and make investments into the other areas of capital, but then also do it in a way that like it's just not one off.
Right.
It has to be in your client experience and implemented throughout and part of your deliverable as a firm.
Your values, at least for me, right? Like, I probably wouldn't have done the exercise had we not met, right? It's like one of
Yeah.
those things. Like, it was very serendipitous and it was like lightning struck, and it was like, okay, this is great. The timing's good. But it's not like you don't think about your values. I've thought about my values a lot. My husband and I have had like conversations about it in the past. And I think the first time we actually started having those conversations was like when our son was born,
Yeah.
or when we were close to, him coming into the world. It was like, okay, you start having those like, oh gosh, what is this experience going to be like? And you're dreaming a little bit with your partner, and you're like, oh gosh, this is going to be so cool. And like, oh, it's going to be so hard. And like, you're sharing these things because it's still just the two of you, and your life hasn't
We're
completely
going to
blown
be
up
the
yet.
best parent.
Yeah, 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 totally, totally.
Yeah.
Then like your world changes and you're taking care of a little person, right? And you're moving through that. But what about going through this exercise for people who don't have children? Who, right? Like some folks, I mean, there's even some reports out there that, more couples are choosing not to go, actually the route of having kids, right?
Yeah.
We see it certainly in other countries where the replacement rate of like having children, like even from an economic standpoint, is like not sustainable. Um, but in my mind, and I know in your mind too, like I know that we would agree on this, right? Like values are important for anybody. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what your family makeup is, right? It's like a definition of a family isn't like two people and a child or like,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
Um, so like how might someone think about it without the lens that I've applied to it, which is like, oh, okay, my husband and I and
A
our
kids
child,
only
like,
lens.
right.
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of young people who are in their 20s that have no kids. They might not even have a partner or a serious relationship
Yep.
yet. We have people who are older that haven't had kids. So I don't think it's like you have to have kids to get benefit from this in any way. But I'm speaking from a perspective that like is hard to remember to like once you have kids, it's like, you
Oh,
know,
yeah. Well, yeah.
you totally forget about what it was like before that. Um, as I was having dinner with my almost 2 year old at like 4:45 yesterday, um, I was like, what would I be doing at 4:45? But I think values are a decision-making framework for anyone. And there's I had this amazing mentor who's the chief strategy officer of our company, and whenever we have like big decisions, he always says like, what must be true?
Mm,
Like what do we know that we can hold true with all these other things that are out there that are changing and unsure of and uncertain and all that
sure.
kind of stuff. So if you think about some decisions that people might have to make, like, what city am I going to live in? Who am I going to marry? Where do I want to go to college? What do I want to do if I don't have kids? What am I going to do with my money? Like those types of decisions. If you know what your values are, then you can use that as a framework when you're thinking about big decisions. I don't think it's like, values are going to help you decide what is for dinner tonight,
No,
but
no, right.
it's like if I know what's important to me, I think very often when we make a decision that feels weird, like it feels like this doesn't feel right, very often it's going against our values.
Mm,
And if they're not labeled, like if you haven't gone through the exercise of doing your values,
right.
you're like, I think this is against my values, but I don't totally know what my values are, kind of thing. But if you have it as a framework and you're like, why does this feel off? Oh, it's not really kind. This isn't really a kind thing to do. A kind person wouldn't do what I'm about to do. And that's why it feels weird to me because one of my values is kindness.
Right.
And so I think it's a decision making framework and something that like you can hold true to yourself and anytime you have a big decision, irrespective of kids.
Well, I think back, I could have absolutely used this exercise in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Probably could have saved me from some poor decisions.
100,
Right? I mean,
100%.
I mean,
Yes. Yes.
and I also think what's interesting, like a bit of hope here, like some of the things that I'm seeing trending. I believe I read an article the other day that was about um, the shift. Like there was this shift in the finances, the health of the finances of millennials, right? And there was like this like doom and gloom before, I don't call it 5, 10 years ago, that like millennials are not prepared financially, they're worse off, they're not like all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just read something like in the last couple of days that said like, oh my goodness, it's not as bad as we thought, right? And what's fascinating to me is, well, what if, like, even as a society or as a culture, we started valuing, I'm going to say value, and, values in the same sentence, but like, what if we changed how much we care about instituting, going through a process to develop what our own values are? Because as we see, like, people are going to church less, right? Like
Yeah.
there's fewer institutions that are helping families know and understand what their values are. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, well, whatever. I'm not going to open up the can of worms on church, right? But
Yeah.
what if, as a society, if society is getting more secular, which it is, then there needs to be a replacement, right? The
Sure.
conversation should come up. And so my mind goes to, gosh, how as a society can we like normalize this behavior and get it to a place where like, gosh, when you turn 21, this is something that you need to do.
Right.
And it's just
Yeah.
like one of those things like, oh, okay, when you're 16 years old, you need a checking account or something, or when you're 18 or whatever it is. It's like one of those things you must have this to like, right. And I'm saying checking account, that's going to be completely obsolete by the time my son
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
comes of age. But one of those things. There are always those things where as you come of age, you go through some practice, call it a ritual or, some type of a ceremony. Like this should be one of those things.
Yeah, I love it. And like you and I have kindness and responsibility as shared values for our families. So
We
like
do.
you and I do, yeah, yeah. So
Ah, that's cool.
my families are growth, presence, kindness, and responsibility. We did four.
I love it.
We actually had community, and then like one day my wife and I were driving, and I was like, which value do you feel like doesn't really fit what we're trying to do? And she's like, why did we pick community? I'm like, I don't really know. Like, it's not like we don't really love
Sure.
community, but we
Yeah.
were like, we originally had it and then we removed it. And, but, when you meet someone, it's always like, what do you do?
Oh
Right?
yeah.
And it's like
Right.
so it's like money, status,
Totally.
what area of town do you live in,
Oh
David?
gosh, yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
they're very judgmental questions, I feel like.
Yeah. Of course.
If like I know this is like pie in the sky, but it's like if you could just be like, oh, what are you like what values did you I don't know how you could ask that without like it being like totally weird, but who knows? But like if it was like
New
David, like
things, new things already always start out as weird,
totally, totally.
right? Like when
But
people started, I remember when Apple came out with the Newton,
right.
right? It was basically an iPad, but
It's
from
true.
another era.
The, it's true. The first time
No one
I saw
adopted it.
AirPods, I was like, I will never wear those, and
Well,
now I'm
yes,
constantly wearing them.
totally, totally.
But I think like that value structure, like aligning around these values, is just a deeper conversation. For people to have that isn't about judgmental status stuff, and you feel the judgment in those questions. Like you probably meet tons of parents just like we do.
Oh, sure.
We have a birthday party tonight, and like the question you will get is, "What do you do for a living? What do you do? Where do you live?" Kind of
Yeah.
thing. And like to be like, actually, you know what? Let me just tell you what my values are. Like to be like, what? Like
Okay, okay. I'm going to issue a challenge. You go ahead and do that, and then you report back how that goes.
we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
All
I'll be
right,
like, no
cool.
one wanted to talk to me. Like,
No, I think to your point, like changing these things in a culture and these social norms is really challenging.
yeah.
I was having a conversation yesterday with a group of people that really believe that society, the world, we are in this period of, um, uh, I want to say rebirth, but like we're in a period of deep tectonic change. Like all feel like the earth is moving underneath us,
Hmm.
and we don't really know. Like there's a lot of fear about what the future holds, and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter who you are. I think everyone feels this way in some ways, and it's because there's just the rate of change is so great right now. And I think at some point, maybe it's 20 or 30 years from now, we'll look back and say like, wow,
Crazy times we're
that was
living.
rough, but like,
Yeah. Yeah.
look what happened on the other side. And so I was having this conversation with people that are actively engaged in trying to move humanity through this time period, which is really big, hairy, audacious goals that they
Yeah.
have.
That's a very big goal. Yeah.
Huge. But what I also got out of it was like this deep sense of like, oh gosh, you know what? Everything is going to be okay. And it's going to be okay because we have people on the planet doing that work,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's not my particular zone of genius, right? Like, I don't know how I can actually participate in some of those big shifts.
Hmm.
But I am deeply grateful that there are people who exist. And so I want to also extend that gratitude to you. I think, like developing not just like the framework, but like a company that can operationalize values at scale is like beautiful work. Like this is not something, someone, you want to come in and be like, "Oh yeah, how much do you want to sell your company for?"
Sure.
Right? Like this is like something that like can operate at scale. You're building something that certainly can operate at scale, but like what happens when you operate at scale with values is a change in humanity. It is a change in society and culture as we know it. It's moving things in the right direction. And so, like, hats off to you. It has certainly benefited me and my family. And I just want to, like, thank you for being on Coated in Gold. This has been, like, fantastic. You have anything? Oh, actually, yes. I want you to tell our community, like, how they can learn more about Total Family. I also know you have a podcast, so, like,
We
go
have a
for it.
podcast called Family Book Club. And the idea behind Family Book Club is like as media and all this stuff has kind of like, everyone's watching different shows and more splintered. I co-hosted with Emily Blue from Hugh Partners, and we just talk about great books. And we encourage families to read the same books and like just start to build that conversational muscle memory. We have season 2 coming out, and we have all the authors of the books coming on season 2, so we're really
Oh, that's
excited
awesome.
to like talk to the authors. So it's gonna be great. Totalfamily.io is our website.
Okay.
You can pretty much get everything you need from us there. I would say that in our blog, there's very rich content, and don't feel obligated if you're a person who like wants to learn about this. Like, you can do some of this stuff on your own. We share our values list. We share a lot of this stuff because our purpose as a company is to help people uncover their vision and support them along the way. So like the shift that you're talking about is the shift that we're trying to create in people, and conversations like this help normalize it. I think the one thing that we're fighting, and I'll leave with this, is like the idea that having a conversation with your partner about values or vision or something like that means that there's something wrong is something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, oh, you and your partner talk to a coach. Are you guys okay? And you know, the shift for us is no, it's actually an area of my life that I care about deeply. So I'm going to be proactive and preventative and make
That's
sure
right.
it never gets to a bad place.
That's
Right.
right.
And so I think like the idea that there's something wrong with your family, for you to need any of these family dynamics resources is something that we're just like trying to fly in the face of, because 99% of our clients are successful, happy, healthy, wonderful people who are just like doing their best, and they're looking for, someone to bounce ideas off of, or someone to listen to what they're saying or help them clarify ideas or something like that.
Absolutely.
So totalfamily.io, and so happy that you went through it.
Well, thank you again. I know it's going to benefit my family for perhaps generations to come, certainly years to come. So
Yep.
thank you, Alex. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening to Coded in Gold. I've been your host, David Newson. If you liked this show, please give us a review on Spotify and Apple Music. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. I'm dying to hear your feedback and keep the conversation going. You can always follow Coded in Gold on our socials for more updates on upcoming episodes. Links are in the description or show notes. Thank you, and take good care.